Caleb, can you go have my class come on in here from I think they're out on the playground right now. Yeah, they're going to come in here to be part of the presentation here. Perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. We're going to get ourselves started here. Come on in and join in. We got a good picture up there on the screen. As I say, if you're going to be on that side, move a little bit because I'm going to stand right over here so I can click the screen. But you're good if you're there. Yep. I just didn't want to have me blocking your view there. I might block your view, so you probably want to move a couple of seats over so that way, I'm not standing in your way. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning to those who are joining us back there on that camera on Facebook and on YouTube and I think on templeshalom.com. But I know we have a whole bunch of people who I saw were online with us. We have people here in the room. Our 6th and 7th graders are going to be joining us in just a moment. And we're going to welcome all of you here to a little presentation on, they never taught me that in Hebrew school, Hidden Israel, Surprise Sites that Tourists Rarely See. You guys can hear me okay here, right? Yeah, we're good? Perfect. Okay. Now, typically, when we talk about touring in Israel, and we think about girls, if we can come in quietly, though, that would be awesome. Thank you. So, when we think about going on a tour to Israel, whether we're going to go on a tour to Israel with our synagogue or with some tour company, whatever it may be, the things that we're going to think about as we're going to make our way to Israel are these places, right? We're going to, it's not too dark, is it? I'm going to turn the lights off up here. Let me see if this makes it a little better. How's that? That's a little bit better. But typically when we're going to go on a trip to Israel with our tour company, with our synagogue, whatever, we think we're going to go here. We're going to go pray at the Kotel. We're going to go climb up Masada. We might hang out in the port town of Jaffa. We might go float in the Dead Sea. We also might think that we're going to hang out on the beach in Tel Aviv. We might go to Machane Yehuda, the famous market in Jerusalem. We're probably going to wind up somewhere riding a camel in the middle of the desert. These are the things that happen on your typical tour to Israel. And on your typical congregational tour to Israel, most congregational tours to Israel are set up to be first-timer tours. A lot of tours are set up that way. Other tours have, maybe second time or a few other more interesting off the beaten path kind of stuff. But today we're going to see that whenever you travel anywhere in the world, if you're not going for the very first time, we'll see that there might be other things that you'll see along the way if you explore a few things, if you go off the beaten path in Israel. And so I want to take you to some things that on your typical tour you wouldn't go to. But if you hung out in Israel a little extra, you might find some things that are kind of fun and interesting along the way. In Israel, we'll start off with food. When you think of Israel, those of you in the room, what do you think of with food in Israel? Falafel and shawarma. Those are the main things I just heard everybody say. Falafel and shawarma. How many of you think of pizza? There's pizza places all over Israel. How many of you think of French fries? Because every falafel place and every shawarma place also serves French fries. How many of you think of McDonald's, Pizza Hut, and Burger King? You don't, but I'll tell you, they're all in Israel, unfortunately. How many of you think of Mexican food and Italian food and Ethiopian food and Indian food and all sorts of ethnic sushi? Anybody think of sushi when you think of Israel? None of you think of sushi, but let me tell you this. In the world, if you take cities of 100,000 people or more, what has the most sushi bars per capita in the world? What city? Tokyo, Japan. Right? That makes sense, right? What's second in the world? Kyoto, Japan. What's third in the world? Someone just said it. Tel Aviv. Sushi bars per capita in the world, third place city in the world is Tel Aviv. Who knew? You would think it would be another place in the Far East, right? No, Tokyo and Kyoto are there, but then Tel Aviv is the third most sushi bars per capita. Who knew? In fact, there's one particular street in the middle of Tel Aviv where the entire street is nothing but sushi bars. For a full block, both sides of the street, only sushi bars. By the way, the best one on that street, all of them. It doesn't matter which one you go to, they're all really good. The first sushi bar in Israel, by the way, opened up in I believe it was 1987 at the Hilton Hotel right on the beach in Tel Aviv. And since then, sushi is huge in Israel. But I'll think of the name and I'll tell you the name of the street. I'm blocking on the name of the street. It's a little street. It's in a neighborhood that you've never been to. No one ever you'll avoid it. I've hung out there because it's a great street. Interestingly, most of the people who work in those sushi bars are not Japanese. They are? No, they're Filipinos and Koreans. Just like most sushi bars in America are run by Korean families and not Japanese families. Weird American food trivia. But in Israel, you might also find another kind of food that you can go to, and that might be the Elvis American Diner. That's right, in the city of Neve Ilan. You can see right here, I'm just going to walk through the screen for a moment. Neve Ilan, which is just outside of Jerusalem, has this place called the Elvis American Diner. Everybody see the Israeli flag right there, flying over the restaurant? That's right, in Israel, there is the Elvis American Diner. You can get burgers and fries there. You can also get pita and hummus there. And Israeli salad, right? The Elvis we'll go inside in just a moment here. On Elvis's birthday, I wrote it down because I got to find out what day that was, January 6th. And on the day Elvis died, August 16th, the place is filled with Israeli Elvis impersonators. Yes, a ridiculous thing, but there it is. You can see the gold statue. Let me get the gold statue of Elvis right out here. This is right over here that you can't see. You can see a couple of mopeds right here. And what you can't see right here are the gas pumps, because this is a gas station. All right, the gas station opened in 1974, and it was called the Mountain Inn Truck Stop. It was a place where there wasn't a lot along the road between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, so this guy opened up a gas station, and he sold water, Coca-Cola, hummus, pita, right? Truckers could stop as they were taking things from Tel Aviv all the way in to Jerusalem. Well, this guy, his name is Uri Yoeli. Uri liked Elvis because in the early 1970s, when he was a teenager, before he opened this place when he was in his early 20s, his girlfriend bought him an Elvis Presley record and showed him a picture of Elvis Presley. And from that day forward, he was enthralled with Elvis Presley, and he started collecting Elvis stuff, and soon enough, there was indeed... Take a look at this painting that hangs on the wall inside. This is Elvis pouring some wine for Uri. Right there, here's our American-Israeli flags. Elvis behind the bar at his little restaurant gas station, pouring a glass of wine for Uri, the owner, and for his wife right there. That painting still hangs inside of the Elvis Cafe. Yes, if you hang out in the Elvis Cafe, indeed, you can get, I hope you can see this okay, but Elvis wine, Elvis ketchup, an Elvis statue inside next to the tables, and all of the Elvis Presley memorabilia. He has over 700 pieces of Elvis memorabilia inside this little gas station restaurant, which is now known as the Elvis American Cafe. Neve Ilan is about, I don't know, maybe it's a 12 minute drive to the city limits of Jerusalem as you're coming from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. What can you get there? Let's see if you can take a look at this picture that's right here. That's right. Burgers and fries and pita on your table. There you go. By the way, you can tell it's not a kosher place because if you can't see, that's the cheese on the Elvis cheeseburger that's there at the restaurant. It's not a kosher place, but right on the road to Jerusalem, you can join in. And again, if you go on the right date, you might see this guy. There you go. That's your Israeli Elvis impersonator. This is from the heavier years of Elvis, you might say, right? When he was, the 70s, when he was performing in Vegas, when he weighed a little extra. That's what it is there. But there you go. A little Elvis American diner, something that most tourists don't see when they're in Israel. By the way, on the other side of the street from Neve Ilan is an Arab village called Abu Ghosh. And what's in Abu Ghosh? There's a street when you first go into Abu Ghosh, it's called Abu Ghosh Road. On the right-hand side, when you get off of Highway 1 and you go into Abu Ghosh, on the right-hand side of the street, there's a hummus restaurant called, that's exactly what it's called. It's called Abu Ghosh Hummus. Right next to that, there's another restaurant. It's called Hummus. Right next to that, right after that, there's another restaurant, and it's called Abu Shukri Hummus. Across the street, there are also on that same block 3 hummus restaurants. So if you don't want to eat a burger at Elvis American Diner, you can go into Abu Ghosh, some of the best hummus in all of Israel. Now, lots of famous people are buried in Israel. If you go to the Mount of Olives, you'll see the graves of various prophets. There are caves around Israel where people are buried. The Baba Sali is buried down, this famous Sephardic Rebbe of the last century is buried in the south of Israel. We have the tombs of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, right? Rachel's tomb, and in the cave of Machpelah. We have the final resting place of Maimonides and of other medieval scholars. We have the final resting place of all sorts of rabbis, Eliezer, etc., who are named in the Talmud. But did you also know that in Israel, we have, girls, I hope you're paying attention to this back there, we have in Israel, that's right, there it is, Harry Potter's grave. That's right, that is the headstone for Harry Potter. Now let me tell you, I have to admit, it's not that Harry Potter. This is Private Harry Potter, who was killed in the Arab riots in Hebron on July 22nd, 1939. And so there it is, Harry Potter's grave in Israel. We have not just the graves of all of the prophets and our ancestors and all, but indeed other famous graves. Some people in modern times, they want to see the grave of Oscar Schindler, right, from the movie Schindler's List, the story of Schindler's List, where he saved Jews. But other people, that cemetery is not too far away from where Harry Potter here is. In Ramla, this cemetery, Ramla, is near the airport. It's in the British military cemetery. Ramla is just a little ways away. It's about a 10 or 15 minute drive away from the airport. So you can go and visit Harry Potter's grave. All right, Harry Potter's too contemporary for you. How about William Shakespeare's grave? That's right, there it is in Israel. William Shakespeare's grave. No, not that William Shakespeare. This William Shakespeare, who died at the age of 41 on May 23rd, 1918, fighting for the British against the Ottoman Empire. He was a truck driver, and he was killed in a truck crash during the war. A bomb went off on the road. He drove his truck off the road, and he's buried there now in the British Military Museum in Jerusalem. So you only thought you could see graves of prophets and of famous Israelis. You go to the military cemetery and all of that. No. Indeed, you can see the graves of Harry Potter and William Shakespeare in Israel. Now, when most people think of animals in Israel, tell me what you think. Camels, cows, alpacas, chickens, lizards. So we think of animals from the desert, right? Lizards, camels, mules, those kind of things. We think of animals that would be on a farm in Israel or on a kibbutz, right? Cows, chickens, turkeys, right? Does everybody know that Israelis eat a lot of turkey? In the world, Israelis eat more turkey per capita than any country on planet Earth. Second place is Hungary. Third place is the United States. Why does Hungary eat a lot of turkey? I have no idea. But in Israel, it's shawarma, exactly. Shawarma, which used to be primarily made from lamb, in modern times, shawarma is made from turkey, and so they eat a lot of turkey in Israel, much more than we do between Thanksgiving and sub sandwich shops in America, right? Huh? Hodu means turkey, right? Hodu ladonai ki tov, turkey for God because it's good. It's a rough trend. I mean, most people say Hodu ladonai ki tov, give thanks to God because God is good. But the word Hodu, which is the jussive form for those grammar nerds in the room like me, Hodu is the command form of to give thanks. Hodu, I'm telling you, give thanks. But Hodu, also spelled exactly the same letters but from a different root, also means turkey. When you think of animals in Israel, those desert animals, right? The camels, the donkeys, yes. I'm going to talk about crocodiles. Crocoloco, Crocodile Farm. That's right. If you go to Israel, if you don't want to see those normal desert animals of donkeys and camels and such, and you don't want to think about the kibbutz animals of chickens and cows and sheep and such, you can go to Crocoloco Alligator Farm. It's in Ir Ovot. Ir Ovot is on the road down to Eilat. From Eilat, if you're in Eilat and you drive up there, it'll take you, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes to get to this place. Yes? We're going to get to that in 3 more slides. Yeah, we're going to get to that one too. At Crocoloco, down in the desert near Eilat at the bottom of Israel, you indeed can visit with the crocodiles. They have over 1,000 crocodiles at Crocoloco, Crocodile Farm. You can visit them, you can pet them, you can play with them. You can even watch their eggs hatch. You don't believe me? There's the pictures. You can play with the baby crocodiles. There you go. Baby crocodiles. You can see the woman, she's the one who owns it with her husband on the left, and she's holding a crocodile egg in her hand. And then you can see petting the baby crocodiles on the right-hand side of the screen. Crocoloco, and yes, that is from the Spanish of loco being crazy. Crazy crocodile, Crocoloco, Crocodile Farm. Crazy crocodile, Crocodile Farm. Why did they start this farm? For suitcases. That is the right answer. No, that's not the right answer. Of course, that's not the right answer. Why did they start this farm? They started this farm because they heard of a couple of places in the Middle East who had crocodiles who were not taking care of them. And they thought to themselves, as most humans do, oh my goodness, those poor, poor crocodiles. I feel so badly for those poor, poor crocodiles. Not something I've ever said in my life. But they did, and they said, well, let's start a crocodile farm, and they did. And they started this crocodile farm down in the desert, and now there are over 1,000 crocodiles. About 10 years ago, there was a problem. There was another crocodile farm down in the south of the country. It was owned by a family that, shall we say, didn't do such a great job with taking care of their crocodile farm. And these kibbutzim and these cities down in the desert started finding crocodiles walking down the middle of their streets. The government came in and said, you people are no longer allowed to own crocodiles. Because they were all over the south. It was going on for about a year or two. The people were just finding crocodiles in the streams near their homes, walking down the street on their homes. Some of them had little pools of water out front with fountains and things, and they were in the fountain. And they were all over down in the south of Israel along the Arava road that goes right down the Arava where the border between Israel and Jordan are on the way down to Eilat. And they found over 100 crocodiles over that 2-year period, just aimlessly wandering around the desert, walking into people's backyards and into their houses. Someone found one in their house. Imagine waking up one morning and in your living room, there's a crocodile. And so Ir Ovot, this Crocoloco crocodile farm, Irit, that's her name. Irit is the one on the left. Her name is Irit. Irit and her husband took in a few hundred crocodiles from the place that got shut down. And so this is the place they were. And if you don't like crocodiles all that much, well, they also have turtles there. Lots and lots of desert turtles that hang out near their crocodiles. They keep them separate from each other. You can imagine why. And so the turtles eat the watermelons, and if they're not careful, the alligators, they keep them away from the turtles. If you're not so sure that you want to drive all the way down to the Arava, almost all the way to Eilat, to see an alligator farm, you can instead go into the Galilee and go near the Yarmouk River, just south of the Kinneret, and you can go to Hamat Gader, hot springs. It's a hot springs there. I can tell you that if you're expecting some big fancy hot springs like you might find in Europe, you're not going to find that. It's a little on, should we say it's a little on the dirty side. The hot springs is not the cleanest spa in the world, but they do also at Hamat Gader. Hamat means hot. So the hotness in Gader, okay? So you can visit the alligators there. You can see that's one of the big alligator pools there at Hamat Gader. And you can go see the alligators. They also have pheasants and a few other animals that are around there. And while you're there, you can go to the spa if you want and hang out in the hot springs. But as I said, it's not the fanciest hot springs in the world. It's a little bit messy. So let me tell you, if you're not into alligators and you're not into turtles, might I suggest that maybe you go to just a little bit to the east of Haifa, to a place called Yodfat. And you can go to the Yodfat monkey forest. That's right, there is a monkey forest in Israel with monkeys that come from Southeast Asia. Why did the monkey forest get started at Moshav Yodfat? It's the same story as the alligators. There was a woman who made Aliyah from Europe. She lived in Central Europe, and she made her way to Moshav Yodfat, wanted to live on a Moshav, and she heard about a story in the news that somebody had brought in their luggage a monkey from Southeast Asia. I don't know how you sneak a monkey from Southeast Asia into your luggage on a flight to Israel, but apparently they did. I can't, anybody have, I don't have a guess. I don't know how you get a monkey in your luggage. For the life of me, I can't figure that out. Like, do you disguise it like a dog and put it in a kennel? Like, I don't know how you get a monkey from Southeast Asia to Israel in your luggage. What's that? Yeah, I don't know if they flew on El Al. I have no idea, but you know, but Israeli security is pretty good. But this woman heard a story on the news about a person who had been arrested. Did I add that part in? Who'd been arrested because she brought a monkey from Southeast Asia in her luggage to Israel. And she thought, as most humans would, because I would never have this thought, I wonder if there are other people who brought monkeys in their luggage from Southeast Asia to Israel. And lo and behold, she discovered that several other people in Israel had illegally obtained monkeys from Southeast Asia and had been fined and arrested, and that there were people who didn't know in the government what to do with these monkeys. So they like tossed them in a zoo. But the zookeepers they didn't have a monkey area in the zoo, but they just kept them. And so she decided on this kibbutz to start planting trees and bringing them in, and built a whole area where you can go now and you can visit and you can feed and you can learn about these Southeast Asian monkeys at the Yodfat monkey forest. And in addition, there are other animals that are there. There's some pheasants and some other birds that wander around in the area there. And they also have, there's some sheep that wander around, and some chicken and some goats and all kinds of other animals now. And it's become quite the petting zoo kind of area. And she has a little cafe there. The food's actually okay. It's not great, but it's okay. And you can eat there at the cafe, and then you can go feed the monkeys. They feed them bananas that are grown locally on that particular moshav, and other vegetables that are grown on the moshav, on Moshav Yodfat. And you can go and visit monkeys. You know, here you thought you were going to go to Israel and you were going to see sheep and goats and camels. You might see cows and chickens on a kibbutz, but indeed you're going to see alligators and turtles and monkeys from Southeast Asia. In fact, since we're talking about turtles, there's a great place right near Netanya called Nachal Alexander. There's a big picture of the whole area right there. And see that bridge that goes across that right there? It's called Turtle Bridge. Why is it called Turtle Bridge? Nachal Alexander, as I said, is near Netanya. Netanya is a beach community, a really beautiful beach community, just to the north of Tel Aviv. And if you go inland just a little bit right here, you can see in the background there are a couple of kibbutzim back there. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen over here, this area over here, this is actually a fishery. It's a fishery for one of the kibbutzim that's in the area here. But the bridge that's right here, this bridge that's right here, this is the Turtle Bridge over Nachal Alexander. Nachal means river, so this is the Alexander River. And if you hang out near this bridge and you come down below the bridge and down here, what will you see when you go below that bridge? And the answer to that question is you'll see a whole bunch of my little friend here. There he is, the giant snap turtle. There are on any given day, you will see more than 1,000 of these large black snapper turtles at Nachal Alexander. This is their natural environment because of the humidity and the way the water is in this particular river. They were not transplanted from everywhere. They naturally came there. And you can go there on any given day and you will see hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of these turtles, and you can feed them, and they're very, very easy to see along the way. So a little bit of animal life in Israel that most tourists don't see. You don't really hang out with alligators and monkeys and turtles when you're in Israel. It's usually, camels and chickens and sheep. Where are the elephants? There actually are elephants at the biblical zoo. You can go check out some elephants there. Yeah, there are elephants there. You have a question? No? Okay. There are other creatures that you can find in Israel. Some of them are real. Alligators, monkeys, turtles. And some of them are not, like the golem. In 1971, there was a famous French modern artist, his name, Niki de Saint-Falais, and who made some sculptures for the biblical zoo in Jerusalem. And they said, can you make some other sculptures? How about a golem? Make a sculpture of a golem. And so, in 1971, and then dedicated in 1972, he did. Here you go. That is, but the people in Israel, they call it Hamifletzet, which means the monster. And it's in a park, in Park Rabinovich, which is in the Kiryat Yovel neighborhood of Jerusalem. And it's a very popular place to go and bring your kids into this park to go play on the Mifletzet. He said, along with another artist who designed some similar sorts of things in Jerusalem, that kids should see scary things so that they can get over their fears. especially if you make those scary things into fun. You might notice that the tongue of the mifletzet of the monster, there are 3 tongues. 1, 2, and 3 are all slides for children to slide down the mifletzet. And yes, it's a park that's very easy to find. As you can see in the upper left here, you can see that it is the mifletzet is right on a main street right here. And it's right there in the park, the mifletzet. You can see all 3 tongues coming out of the mifletzet, all 3 tongues that are the slides. Jerusalem recently put in a mass transit system, including there's a subway system that goes, an underground train that goes from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and then they put in this light rail through the city, and they were going to remove the mifletzet because the light rail was going to go through Kiryat Yovel. That thing's ugly. The complaints they got shut down the removal of the mifletzet because people wanted to keep the mifletzet there because, look, you bring your kids there. Yes?
When our 2 oldest children were born in Israel, were little, we were there.
Yeah. It's a great little park. So much a favorite park that indeed, yes, this is my daughter, now 16, but that's 3-year-old Ilana getting ready to go down the slide on the mifletzet. So that's Ilana there. There were 3 pictures of her there. She chose that one. She's like, you can show this one of me on the mifletzet. But that was her right there getting ready to go down the slide to the mifletzet, a super popular park in Israel, but not anything that if you went to Israel on a tour with kids, I doubt there's any tour that would ever take you to this park. This park is crammed full of people with kids every weekend because it's such a fun, it's a huge, you can see, that's a 3-year-old standing there, and that's just in the mouth of the thing, so you can see how huge this thing is, right? And if we go back one, let me get rid of it, you can just see, like, here's the whole mifletzet. You can see this is a full-grown adult man right there. So this thing's pretty tall. There's ladders on the back that bring you up into the mouth of it. But full-grown man, full-grown woman right here. You can see it's a rather large, big, giant thing. But again, if you went to Israel on a tour with children, I'm not sure any tour would take you to Park Rabinovich in the Kiryat Yovel neighborhood to hang out on and go play with your kids on the mifletzet. There's a merry-go-round and a swing set and other kind of things in that park. It's a cool little park, great place for a picnic. So, question. Are we going to go there? I don't know. You want to go there with me? I'll go to the park with you. We'll get on an airplane next week. And we'll go. We'll go play and by the way, if you were in Jerusalem and you said, you got in a taxi, and you said, take me to Park Rabinovich, the taxi driver, I'm going to say it's a 50-50 chance that the taxi driver will know where that is. If you say, take me to Park Rabinovich, maybe half the taxi drivers might know where it is. If you say, take me to Hamifletzet, every taxi driver in Jerusalem knows where that is, right? Nobody knows the name of the park, but everybody in Jerusalem knows. People don't call it Park Rabinovich. People call it Park Hamifletzet. They call it the Monster Park. I'm not sure many people even know the real name of the park. Certainly most taxi drivers don't know the name of the real park. Question? Huh? Rabinovich, yeah, it's named after one of the early leaders in developing the modern city of Jerusalem. That's what it's named after. All righty. Let me go. You'd been there before? Yeah. Israel is full of interesting caves that you can go to. For those of you who were on the Israel trip from the temple in 2019, we went to a cave that was the burial place of Honi HaMe'agal, Honi the circle maker. That was where he was buried. We saw a synagogue that's above the cave of Shem and Ever, where son and great-grandson supposedly taught Talmud to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There are caves all over the place of interesting, wonderful things to explore. The Qumran Caves, right, where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. But here's a cave that if you go to Israel, you can't visit. I've been there. I can't visit it anymore either because it's now officially closed. It's down in the desert, and it's in an area called Nachal Parizim, down in the Negev. And this is Nachal Parizim. I hope you can see it okay, but this is, they're known as the Flower Caves. You can see the bus coming into the Flower Cave area. You can see these posts around blocking it off. You can see the holes in the ground and people walking down into the cave. Here's inside the cave, the white cave. There's people coming out of the cave right here. The Flower Caves are called the Flower Caves because when you walk through the caves, when you come out, you look like somebody just dumped a bag of flour on you. They're these kind of chalk caves inside, and the floor is filled with this, and when you walk through, it falls off the ceiling of the cave. It comes up from the floor of the cave, and when you come out, you are literally covered in what looks like flour. And it's not just like you have a little bit on your shoes. When anybody would come out of this cave, it looked like somebody literally dumped a 5-pound bag of flour from the supermarket over your head. That's how covered in the stuff you would be. About 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago, there was an earthquake in the area, and part of the cave collapsed. And so they sealed off the cave. It was a super popular thing back, especially in the 70s and 80s. It was super popular to go there. Very, very popular hiking spot. It's in the middle of, it's like the middle of nowhere. There's nothing near it. There's not a city, it's this weird little winding road out into the middle of nothing. And the cave collapsed on itself, the opening of the cave collapsed on itself. It was a little more than 10 years ago, maybe 12 or 13, I think, something like that. And they've sealed it off for good, and no one's allowed to go in anymore. So all we have are pictures and memories of being in the Flower Cave in Israel. It's the only one in the area. There's nothing else like it. And unfortunately, no one can go in it anymore. But just a reminder that there are all kinds of amazing caves that you can go into Israel. Most people don't go exploring caves in Israel. In a few more minutes, we'll see a little more about strange-looking things in caves. But this is... you can still walk in the area right there. That's a more modern picture taken about just a couple of years ago. You can still walk on the pathway that leads to the Flower Caves, and you can see where the entrance is, but you can't go through anymore. Go ahead.
Did you ever go there?
I did go there. I went there back in the 1980s, and
Nice.
huh?
Did you wear something nice? Because you said you get
Did I wear something nice? I wore a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, because we knew where we were going, and I mean, it all washes out, but but I wouldn't wear something nice to go hiking in the desert anyway, right? Because we were hiking in the middle of the desert. We were on a desert trip for a week. So, but a really interesting place to go, and you can see, even walking outside, you can see the beautiful rock formations that are there, a really beautiful area to walk through. If you don't like to walk, especially up hills, especially up very big hills, especially very big hills that are really mountains, like maybe one called Mount Carmel. Where's Mount Carmel, everybody? What's it near? Mount Carmel is the main area of the city of Haifa, okay? If you go to Haifa, of course, all the hotels are way up on top of the hill, right, with the beautiful views, and the port is down below. But to get from the port down below up to where the beautiful hotels and restaurants are at the top of the Carmel, you either have to hire a taxi or you need to walk. Anybody want to walk up that mountain? It's almost 1,000-foot elevation rise to go up to the Carmel, up that road. So if you want to go and you don't feel like walking, you don't feel like taking a taxi, you might want to take one of the world's shortest subway systems. Because right there, that is the Carmelite. That is the car inside of the Carmelite, which the Carmelite is the Carmelite was opened in 1959. It goes from sea level all the way to the top of Mount Carmel, and along the way there are 6 stations that you can ride, as you go up the Carmel. The elevation rise is 899 feet, and it runs, this is one of the world's shortest subway systems, right? The entire subway, 1.1 miles. That's right, it's a 1.1 mile subway system. It's underground, and of course, it was completed, and then immediately after its completion and opening in 1959, everybody started moving to other parts of Haifa so that nobody wanted to ride it anymore, because no one lived near it anymore. So why do I need a subway that goes from one place I don't go to another place I don't go? And it's only a little more than a mile, but it does go up almost 1,000 feet in elevation. So, but now it's become a little bit of a curiosity. It still runs. There are two cars that go up and down. There's two tracks. They go up and down, right, like this. And it takes, it's a very, very long journey, 8 whole minutes on the subway to go from the bottom to the top. And there are 6 stops along the way, 3 on the way up and 3 on the way down. They will take you to the 3 major centers of Haifa. There's the downtown. There's the Hadar neighborhood, which is like kind of a hipster neighborhood now. That's halfway up. It's kind of a cool thing. And then at the top, you get your final station where all of the hotels and all of the restaurants and all of that great stuff are. It's only a couple of dollars. You would hope so, because it's only 1.1 miles, right? But it's only a couple of dollars to ride the Carmelite, something that most people who live in Haifa have never ridden the Carmelite. But it still runs. Since 1959, it still runs. It stopped a couple of times to refurbish the tracks, to refurbish the cable. There was an earthquake in the area back in the 70s, and they had, or in the 80s, and they had to shut it down for about a year and a half to fix the stations and things. But you can ride on the Carmelite. You can go to the station at the top of the mountain on the left. You can join it on the station at the bottom of the mountain on the right. And you'll be able to, you can see there's the front of the Carmelite, and you can see the lovely, it looks comfortable, doesn't it? Looks like a comfy subway system, and you can relax for your 8-minute ride up to the top of the mountain. I've taken the Carmelite many times because I've taken people there. Have you taken the Carmelite?
Yeah, we were in Haifa and we didn't have cars, so we rode it right in.
Yeah, so it's great. It's comfortable, it's clean, and it's a nice little thing to get to the top of the mountain on the Carmel when you're in Haifa, a fun little place to be. So you can ride the Carmelite there. We were talking about cave exploring. Back in, I made myself a note on the year, I got to look here. Back in 1968, in the Judean hills, there was a quarry. They were quarrying stone, build homes for a neighborhood that's called Beit Shemesh, just a little bit outside of Jerusalem in the Judean hills. And they were quarrying stones to build, because everything's stone in the area of Jerusalem, right? So they were quarrying these stones, and a couple of explosions and a little bit of dynamite, and someone looks over and says, there's a very weird opening right over there where we just blew up some dynamite. Let's go check out what that opening is. I wonder what that is. And they went over to the opening, and they saw it looked like there was a cave, and they went inside with some flashlights, and when they got inside, they found this. Those are stalactites and stalagmites. This is the Avshalom Cave, or known as the Sorek Cave, which is a cave just outside Jerusalem. You can drive there from Jerusalem in about like 15 or 20 minutes. You can get to this place, and to get in, it's like $8, $9 to go in and see. There's no bus that goes there, so you can take a bus nearby, and then you can take a little taxi over to Beit Shemesh and then take a taxi over. I think once a day there's a bus that might stop actually there. And this is in Stalagtite National Park. Who knew that Israel had a Stalagtite National Park? But there is. That's the name of the park that it's in, Stalagtite National Park. And inside you can find amazing views like those of stalactites and stalagmites for inside of these caves. I haven't been to the one in Manitou, but I've been to Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. So this is like a mini version of Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico. If you've been there, This is like a mini version of that. And there's actually a few things there. They've named some of the stalactites. You can see you can see here's a pathway going through. Here's another pathway going through. And at various places, they just upgraded the lighting system in there so that the lights will not affect the stalactites and the stalagmites anymore. And so it has hues of the spectrum that are not damaging to what's going on inside. And they've named some of them. And inside they have the birthday cake. And they have one, and when you see it, I couldn't find a picture of it, but they call it the United States Capitol. Because the stalactites, they've come in, and there's this one that actually, it looks, the way it's formed itself, it looks like the shape of the U.S. Capitol building. And it's amazing that they've named that. And then there's, of course, like I said, the birthday cake. It actually looks like it has candles on it and frosting. And it's really an amazing thing. You could spend about an hour and a half inside of the cave. And like I said, from Jerusalem, probably if you had a car, it's only like from the edge of Jerusalem, maybe a 20-minute drive to leave Jerusalem and go see the Sorek Caves near Beit Shemesh in the Judean hills. How many of you like very weird stories? I would like to introduce you to a new country. Now, I know some of you know that if you go to Italy, you can find the tiny country of San Marino. And if you go to Rome, you can find the tiny country of Vatican City. But did you know that inside of Israel, there is another country? Okay, so no one in the world recognizes that it's another country, except for all of the people who live in the country. Both of them. Yes, I did say, well, not so much anymore because the founder died 3 years ago at the age of 88. But if you go to Israel, anybody ever heard of microstates? Microstates are little tiny countries that are not recognized by pretty much anyone except the people that live there. And if you go to Israel and you go to the beach, along the beach, and you drive all the way north to a beach called Auxive, which is mentioned in the Bible, okay? It was a major port city in the time of the prophets. And you go to Auxive, you will find there a sign that will lead you to the little tiny country it's at the north of Israel, on the beach, right below Lebanon. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, you can travel while you're in Israel. You can go to the country of Auxive land. That's really not a joke. That is the national flag of Auxive land. It's got a copy of the building in Auxive land, and a little mermaid. And this is the national flag of Auxive land. Let me tell you about Auxive land. There was a guy by the name of Eli Avivi. Eli Avivi fought in the Israeli War of Independence. And after the War of Independence, I believe he was born in Iran, actually, but he moved to Israel. He fought in the War of Independence for Israel. And after the War of Independence, maybe about 4 years later, so like 1952, he decided that he would go to this village that he remembered seeing during the war. It was a village that became abandoned. And he moved into the village. And he lived there for about 10 years, illegally. He started building little structures, some tents, a couple of little buildings and things. And in 1961, Israel signed a deal with a little French company, which is actually now a Chinese-owned company, but a little French-owned company, a little company called Club Med. And they signed the deal with Club Med to build a Club Med in Auxive, right up near the top of the border, right near Lebanon, right on the beaches of Israel. For 10 years, Club Med did nothing with their contract that they signed, except they paid Israel some money. But then Club Med decided in 1971 that they were going to build their Club Med site. And Israel came in, the Israeli government came in, and kicked out Eli Avivi, who'd been living there since 1952, almost 20 years now, right? They kicked him out and started knocking down the buildings. And so what did he do? He took Israel to court to stop them from building the building. They actually, here's what happened in the long story. He said, you can't knock down the buildings. And they said, why not? Because these buildings are part of the sovereign nation of Auxive land. I declare my independence from Israel. You cannot knock down the buildings in my country. So they arrested him. He spent 10 days in court, or 10 days in jail. He was, I got to look up I wanted the exact words. He was charged with, this is the actual charge that was on the documents in court. You ready? You ready for this? He was charged with creation of a country without permission. That was the charge. 10 days in jail, and at the end, a judge ruled there is no such charge, so he can't be held in jail anymore. So then he sued Israel. He sued Israel. And he won. And the result was that Israel rented him the land for 99 years without declaring that it was an independent country. That was the deal. We will not recognize it as an independent country, but we will lease you the land for 99 years. And in 1971, that's how Auxive land was created, right there on the beach. There's a sign if you're traveling in Israel. It doesn't say Auxive land, it says Eli Avivi, his name. And you can see in the background here, you can see the former home of the head of the village that was abandoned in the war in 1948. And you can see the little sign that says Auxive land, rooms for rent, camping, parking. It became kind of a famous place. Among those who have visited and hung out and stayed in the guest house and camped out there, a couple of names you might know: Shimon Peres, former Prime Minister of Israel; Sophia Loren, Bar Raffaeli, Paul Newman, all have visited there. Haaretz, one of Israel's biggest newspapers, calls it a hippie paradise. The Constitution talks about the election. There is a president. Eli Avivi, until he died 3 years ago, was the president. The Constitution says the president will be elected. These are the exact words of the Constitution. The president will be elected by his own vote. It's the actual words of the Constitution. The president will be elected by his own vote. And the Constitution also says that the country will be run by the legislature, which will be elected by his and her own votes. That's Eli and his wife. And the parliament has never met, because it says in the Constitution the parliament only needs to meet if the country's existence, which is based on peace and tranquility, is ever questioned. And since peace and tranquility has always reigned in Auxive land, the parliament has not needed to meet at all. And so people go and camp there. Haaretz, one of Israel's biggest newspapers, calls it Israel's hippie paradise. If you need a little question about how hippie is it, would you like to see a picture of Eli from a couple of decades ago? Here we go. That's Eli Avivi a couple of decades ago, and you can see the Auxive land main building, which has a couple of guest rooms. Anybody ever stayed at the Motel 6? Yeah, much nicer than the guest rooms in Auxive land. Motel 6 is much, much nicer. And you can camp there on the beach. I've actually camped there on the beach with a group. We camped out there at Auxive land. But his wife is still there. And in the main building, you can get a meal. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's a solid 3.5, maybe a 4. Yeah, no, it's better than 2, definitely better than 2. It's a solid 3, maybe a 4. And you also can go to the Auxive land Museum, which has all of the artifacts of the entire history of Auxive land, and as they call it there, other stuff we found on the beach. And so they have seashells and other things that are washed on the shore. There's a great story. As soon as they declared Auxive land, there was, coming out of Lebanon, there was a Palestinian invasion. These Palestinian terrorists were coming into Israel. And they came onto the beach. They came out of Lebanon, and the very first beach is Auxive. It's right, you go around, there's these white cliff grottos right at the border with Lebanon, and you come down, and they're there, and they come onto the beach, and they go into the house. And they were met by Eli Avivi's wife and an Uzi. He dropped his weapons, he dropped the grenades on the ground, and the IDF came and arrested the other terrorists, and they were all taken away. That was the very beginning of Auxive land. And so this is the story of Eli Avivi. Whenever I talk about Auxive land, people always want to know, It's a country, right? So when you visit a country, what's one of the things, if you're a traveler, that you want from being in a country? Passport stamp. Yeah, there it is. The Auxive land passport stamp, which you can get if you go to Auxive land. It says right here, it says, Rina ve'Eli Avivi. Rina and Eli Avivi, their names. And then here it says, Medinat Auxive. The Auxive land, the land of Auxive, or the country. And then when he was alive, Eli would sign people's passport pages as well and put this additional stamp that has the main building on it right there. So you can get a passport stamp for visiting the country of Auxive land. By the way, when you cross the border back into Israel, no one will stop you. You're welcome to go in and out, and you're good to go. Yes? They're in Israel. They're not in Lebanon. They're right below the border. No, the border with Lebanon's pretty quiet. In the 70s, yeah, but nowadays the border with Lebanon's a pretty quiet border. All right, pretty quiet border there. There's also strange borders in Israel. Sometimes you can transport yourself to other places. Who would think that when you're in Israel, you can just drive down the street, and by down the street, I mean into the desert right next to Gaza, to a city called Netivot, and you could be in America, or France, or soon to be England, because if you go to Netivot is it's a nothing little settlement in the middle of the desert near Gaza. The only thing people go to Netivot for is to visit the grave of the Baba Sali. The Baba Sali was this Sephardic Rebbe, a mystic, and people pray at his grave. He died in the last century. All right? People go to Netivot. The other reason they go to Netivot, they can't afford to live anywhere else, and there's cheap housing in Netivot. But there's an architect there, and he wants to make Netivot a place where people go, because everybody wants to go to a city that's right next to Gaza, don't they? And so his way of convincing you to go there, those are two shopping malls. One of them is supposed to be that it's in France, right? One of them is supposed to be in France, and it's all kinds of French type shops. And the other one's supposed to be in New York. He's building a replica of Big Ben for his next project. But he figures this will get people to want to come to Netivot, because why else would you go there? There's no other reason to come. So he decided that he was going to build these things in Netivot. And so there you go. One last place that you can go in Israel. I think it's kind of funny that anybody would want to go here, because if you go to Israel, what do you want to see? You want to see Israel, right? There's an easy way to see Israel when you go to Israel. I know that sounds very funny, doesn't it? There's an easy way to see Israel when you go to Israel. You can see all of Israel, the entirety of it, from the north to the south, from the east to the west. Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, the Negev Desert, the Dead Sea, Masada, all of it. You can see all of Israel in slightly more than an hour. It's true, you can. But only if you go right next to the city of Latrun, which is on the road from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. There's a wonderful tank museum of the Israeli tank corps. But down the road from the Israeli tank museum, there's a little place called Mini Israel. That's right, they have mini models of everything in Israel. You can see right here, this is the beach in Tel Aviv. This is the Dan Hotel right here. That's the Dan Panorama over there. This is the Azrieli Mall right over here. And you can see all the people walking by it. This is the windmill at Yamin Moshe. This is the King David Hotel right there. You can go to Mini Israel and you can see every famous site there is in Israel, the Kotel, everything, etc. Speaking of the Kotel, right? How big is the Kotel? How many people have been to the Kotel? It was pretty big, right? It's much smaller than you thought. Let me show you. See, it's a really tiny thing, the Kotel. It's really not that big. Little kids can sit on top of it, it's so small. But you can go to Mini Israel, and you can see all of Israel in about an hour to an hour and a half by walking around the different gardens in this little mini park that will show you all of Mini Israel. I've been told that in the last couple of years, it's fallen somewhat into disrepair during COVID, that they haven't been repairing things and such. I'm hoping that they'll bring it back, because it was kind of a fun little thing. Again, most tourists won't go there, strangely, for the reason that they want to see the real thing and not a model of the real thing. But it's a funky little place. I've been there a couple of times. I was there when it first opened, and they've really done an amazing job. They did an amazing job. You can actually see, you can't see it because this is not motion here, but you can actually, these people that are down here that the little girl's pointing at, she's pointing in that because they're actually davening, like the little models of the people are davening at the hotel. And so, and they have planes that take off at Ben Gurion Airport, and they take off and then they go on a little invisible track and come back around and land. And you can go Tel Aviv is there, Haifa, Jerusalem, there's a Bedouin village, there's all of these things, including an ancient Jerusalem that's there that you can see as well. So this is the fun of seeing mini Israel. If you want to see real Israel, you can join me and Lisa on June 8th through 20th this next summer, because we're going to be heading to Israel on a tour called Fun, Food, and Foundations. We'll be doing all kinds of things there. We'll be at the Western Wall. We'll be at Masada. We'll be in the Dead Sea. Because it's food, we're going to be having meals, we're going to be having Yemenite and Israeli and Moroccan and Ethiopian foods. We're going to sample Israeli wines. We're going to go to the salad trail in the desert. We're going to do all sorts of great fun stuff. We're going to be making our own za'atar and olive oil and all sorts of great, wonderful, fun things for 12 days. So if you're interested, I actually have flyers right here about the tour. If you want to come and join us next summer on the tour, that will get you there to see all of real Israel. I promise you, we won't take you to mini Israel. We'll actually take you to the real stuff and not the model that's outside of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Although maybe if you want to sneak over there, you can go on your own and do that. But we'd love to have any of you who are interested in joining us, including those of you online who are with us. And with that, I'll remind you that next month, on January 30th, our next session of They Never Taught Me That in Hebrew School, which is Jews Who Rock, Jewish rock stars, a whole session on Jewish rock stars from the 1950s all the way to today, some of whom are very actively Jewish, some not so much. But it'll be kind of fun, including some stories of some Jewish rock stars. Which Jewish rock star blows shofar at his synagogue each and every year? Which Jewish rock star was a bar mitzvah tutor before he became a rock star? Those stories and more on January 30th. Some pop music people who are Jews and involved in the Jewish community. So thank you all for coming. I hope you discovered some fun, interesting, way off the beaten path places in Israel. And I hope one day, if you don't come with me next summer and you've never been, I hope one day you will find your way to Israel. It is an amazing place to see, amazing people, amazing food, amazing sights, amazing everything. And it's an amazing place. And not only the big sights, but also some of these off the beaten path, funky, weird places really make visiting Israel all that much greater. So thanks for coming today, everyone. And thank you to all of you who are online with us. Have a great rest of your day. Don't forget, next Sunday is the men's club meeting. There's a great speaker for the men's club meeting, so please join in for that. Next Sunday, I think it's at 9:30, I believe is when it starts, or 9:40. 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock for davening, 9:30 Devar Torah, and 9:40 for the program. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. It's on, yeah, right, online too, yes.